The first season of Andor, even though it wasn't a massive rating success, was one of the very few things that actually picked up viewers as it went on with the season, as opposed to every other Star Wars show that's been out there. And even though it wasn't watched by a ton of people, some of the people that did absolutely love it. So you would think that they would have wanted to get everybody possible on board for a season 2. Well, season 2 is here, and the first 3 episodes released on Disney Plus. And when I woke up this morning and saw social media reactions, I thought that something crazy had gone on in the first couple episodes of Andor. Andor season 2 starts with major controversy as many Star Wars fans object to repulsing scene. And I'm seeing a bunch of people tweet about this, tweet about that, tweet about sexual assault, about rape, how this doesn't belong in Star Wars. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, did they go full like Game of Thrones with this? Like, is that the level of kind of violence and, you know, sexual assault that we see, like something that you would see in Game of Thrones? Is that what they did in Star Wars? And I gotta be honest with you, I watched it and I thought it was pretty much a big nothing burger. However, people have been talking about this all day long. It doesn't help that Disney Star Wars immediately does a bunch of interviews and runs a bunch of articles about what a milestone this is, showing the first attempted sexual assault, which wasn't even a rape or anything, the first attempted sexual assault in the history of Star Wars. To put this in perspective, for people that haven't seen the scene, and I think there's a lot of reasons to be critical of Andor, and I will continue to be critical of the things that I think deserve to be critical. The fact that people are paying so much attention to this and not paying attention to, I don't know, all of the Trump allegories throughout the first couple episodes, like the modern day politics elements, is wild to me. And it's been overshadowed by this. The scene itself, Bix is there with a lot of her friends, and an Imperial officer knows that they're not documented workers, that they're not supposed to be there. And he offers her, hey, scratch your back, I'll scratch mine. I want to sleep with you. I won't tell anybody. I won't tell anybody you're not supposed to be here. You won't get in any trouble. She says no. He tries to force himself on her. Like, she's like up against a wall and he's like moving in to try to kiss her, right? She pushes him away. A fight ensues, right? She gets in a shot. He throws her against the wall. He grabs her leg to try to drag her back, and she hits him in the head with a wrench. And he wanders around a little bit, but he's dead. That's the shocking, disgusting, awful scene that I'm seeing everybody talk about. And I get it. If it had been like super graphic, or if maybe it actually happened, or if it was like Game of Thrones HBO level rape scene, I would be like, okay, I can get where there's some outrage. That wasn't there. And the one thing I continually hear is, well, this type of thing, even if they didn't show anything happening, even if it was just an attempt, this like doesn't belong in Star Wars. If that's your opinion, that's fine. But we have seen it in Star Wars before, which is why I think there's a disconnect. Now, I have read, I've talked about this from time to time. I'm a big fan of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, which consists of hundreds of novels, hundreds of comic book stories, all of this stuff. I don't expect everyone. I expect that I've read 99% more Star Wars material than most people out there, okay? So I understand that maybe not everybody knows that Boba Fett's story, that when Boba Fett was younger, him and his young wife, when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, his wife got raped by his superior officer. She tried to hide it from him because he knew that he would kill this person if he found out. He then does find out. He kills the superior officer and refuses to tell the court what happened to lead to him doing that, because out of shame and embarrassment for her, that she wouldn't want that put out there. He ends up getting disowned, banished. Okay, that's Boba Fett's story. You've also got a childhood friend of Luke Skywalker who joins the Empire and works his way up the ranks of the Empire. He sees an Imperial guard trying to rape a prisoner in a cell, and he puts a stop to it and stops that person from doing that. We've seen this. Now, again, I don't expect everybody to have read these books. However, if you watch Return of the Jedi, you saw sexual assault too. Okay, and this scene has been getting brought up a lot, right? Princess Leia and Jabba the Hutt. And I don't even want to just talk about her in a slave outfit and her chained up and all of that. At the beginning, when this happens, when she gets discovered, he licks her. And not only that, he actually, when they turn away and C-3PO says, oh, I can't look at this, he kisses her like full on the face. And maybe you aren't familiar with the novelization for Return of the Jedi, right? But it's even more telling. I wish I had my book out of storage right now where I'd show you in the novel where it says it, but this is from the novelization of Return of the Jedi, published in 1983, by the way, right? With full approval from George Lucas. When Leia's captured by Jabba, instead of him saying, I'm sure, when she says, I have very powerful friends, Jabba, and Jabba's like, I'm sure, he says, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I shall thoroughly enjoy the pleasure of your company. Additionally, instead of simply licking his lips as seen in the movie, he's described as planting a beastly kiss squarely on the princess's lips. Now, they also go further into it, where the reason he has her change clothes is because, look, Jabba has a human fetish. That's what he does. The reason he had her change clothes is because he didn't like the sandy taste of what she was wearing. So he put her in the metal bikini so he can lick her skin. So the idea of someone being chained up, forced to wear a metal bikini, and then being licked by Jabba the Hutt for his own gratification, I don't know what to tell you. That is sexual assault. All right. So that has been the wild thing for me to witness. I think there's a lot of things you can talk about this show. I think the Mon Mothma sequences, I think so much of it is a hit or miss, and I think a lot of it is a miss, especially from what we saw in season 1. I'm not a big fan of the Cyril plot line at all. I think some of the spy stuff with Luthen is done actually very, very well. I do think that it drags a little for the general audience. But my main concern for those first 3 episodes would be how on the nose it was for the Imperials. Not there to detect rebel activity. The Imperials were here to essentially deport undocumented migrants and undocumented workers. That's how on the nose a lot of this shit was. And people aren't even talking about that. They're not even criticizing the fact. They're criticizing it for a rape scene, which was not a rape scene, right? In which someone tries to force himself on her. She pushes him off. They're all fully clothed, everything, like no type of groping, like whatever. He tries to hold her hand, I suppose, at one point. That's about as much touching went on. Pushes off, a fight scene ensues. It was a fight scene, not a rape scene. And it's just so weird because I get it. Not everyone's going to have read all the stuff I've read, but you have watched, right? You have watched Return the Jedi. And this gets to a bigger point about Andor itself. I do think that Andor, season 1 of Andor, is one of the more competent things that Disney has made. I don't love the show or anything like that. I don't hate it like I hate some of the other shit that they've put out. I do think they're in a very dangerous territory if they don't make Bail Organa a massive part of this entire thing, really breaking even more Star Wars lore. I'm not a big fan of casting Andor as a character, but the point of the show, in my mind, is to show how rebellion starts and how evil the Empire is, how they crush the little guy, and how each and every person has a different reason or a different story or a different breaking point for what made them decide to say, hey, this is enough. I'm pushing back. I think that's kind of the point of the show. So I don't mind them showing the Empire being bad and evil because they are in Star Wars, right? That's the point. But I do think when you make a show like Andor that is a slower burn, it has a little more mature themes, stuff like that. I am all for making different kinds of Star Wars projects. I think it's okay to make Star Wars projects that are just for little kids, like very young age oriented. I think that's okay. I also think it's okay to make mature themed Star Wars shows. But when you do that, you can't spend the amount of money they spent on Andor. They spent $300 million on season 2 of Andor. Okay? That's way too high a budget if you're going to make what is not a general audience friendly show. And I don't think that Andor is. And I think the massive outrage we're seeing about this scene that I really didn't think was like deserving of all of that outrage, I think that's one more indication that this is not a show that's intended for general audience members at all. I think more criticism should be how heavy-handed they were with the modern day political messaging and the clear Trump allegories that they're trying to push in this, right? But that's not what I saw today. Today, I saw a bunch of people who saw the most like bare bones, attempted sexual assault sequence that was not graphic in any way, that was not gratuitous in any way, that didn't happen. It was basically just a fight sequence and pretended like that is just, oh my God, how can we have that? When we have examples all throughout Star Wars over the decades and decades and decades of sexual assault being perpetrated by evil people. I think there's a lot of other reasons to criticize that have nothing to do with that. And that might not be the most popular opinion, because I saw a lot of people that follow me and might watch my channel, other content creators that are in this. I saw a lot of people have very, very vocal messages specifically about this scene. I don't know if a lot of them didn't actually watch it, or a lot of them maybe didn't remember what they had watched or read before, or haven't watched or haven't read before. I don't know. But to me, I just didn't think it was deserving, one, of all the attention, period, because they were proud of the milestone to show how bad sexual assault is, everybody. So that's part of it. The fact that headlines like this were immediately created. But I think the reaction from fans is a little bit overblown. That's just me. That might sound crazy coming from me. You might think that I overblow everything I possibly can. But I'm just giving you my honest opinion. And that specific scene, when I saw people talking about it, I thought it was just going to be the most horrific, most terrible, most awful thing you could possibly imagine. How could they put that in Star Wars? And to me, it just wasn't that bad. If you want to talk about rape, you want to talk something that's actually offensive, Disney Star Wars has raped George Lucas's legacy far worse than anything we've seen so far in Andor.